I actually hate going after Stuart Gregor because this time last week actually, Stu, Tuesday morning, we both woke up feeling quite sorry for ourselves because we were up in Darwin for an ALSA conference and we had a very late night at Shenanigans where Stu dragged us all up onto stage to do karaoke and singing songs like K-San and Living on a Prayer and December of '63 and about a multitude of other songs. So this time last week, our voices weren't actually working at all, but it was a very good session. And as for the Sydney Swans, Stu, you will go out into the mighty Fremantle Dockers will knock you off in the first round, and you won't even get past Adelaide, I think, in the round after that. So gone. I'm going to talk to you about how to sell to independents, and it's going to be very simple. In fact, Stu again has taken all my lines. Where he uses the word bias, I use the words relationship, relationship and relationship, and that relationship has to lead to profit. And the profit has to be equal and has to be sharing for both parties. And how can I talk about this? Now, I'm not sure how to use these gizmos. I've actually put up what my role in life is at the moment, and I'll talk about the little fish on the side in a second. But I currently do have 6 liquor stores. We've just recently purchased a new one this year. I own a small vineyard. I've got a small distributor. We do importing and exporting. As David said, I'm the General Manager of Porter's Liquor. I'm also the current National President of ALSA. I am also the Chairman of ABA. Now, not many people would know what ABA is. ABA stands for Alcohol Beverages Australia, which is a new organisation that's just been created out of the old NABIC. And this is going to be a group which we're quite excited about. It used to operate on about a budget of $45,000, but now runs on a budget of $800,000 to $1 million. And it is the organisation that in Australia will take on the zealots, the anti-alcohol lobby. You'll be hearing a lot more about this organisation over the next 3 or 4 months. It is backed by all big industry, which we need their funding, but ABA will be the voice of industry against the likes of FARE, which I think has been needed for a long time. I'm also on the board of Drinkwise. Those of you who know Drinkwise is a great organisation that's trying to create cultural change around alcohol over the next 20 years. And if you've seen the Drink Properly campaign or Don't Buy It For Them campaign, that is all about Drinkwise Australia, which is a great organisation. And I also do a little bit of consulting on the side. Now, as for the fish, that fish was caught in July this year, and it is what I call the sausage roll. What is my sausage roll? What turns me on? What do I get excited about? Why do I live? You know, and how many companies understand who I am and how it makes me tick. That fish was caught off Hervey Bay this year, as I said, and the company that sponsored us was Grants. Grants have worked out there are certain industry people who like go fishing, and they do not put any conditions on this trip. They take us away either to Broome, to the Northern Territory, or, as I said, this time to Hervey Bay, and take us fishing. They don't ask anything for it. They don't ask us to buy beforehand. They don't ask us to buy afterwards. But guess what happens? Every time Porter's Liquor has got free space in a catalogue, where do I naturally go to fill that space? I naturally go to Grants. I naturally go to, if they come to see me about their new half bottles of Hendrick's gin they're about to launch, that gets to fill the space. I do it without hesitation. The other great company that looks after my interests at the moment is Coopers. And I only just thought about it when Glenn was doing his presentation, which was very good. Coopers know I love soccer. Coopers know I love Liverpool. Coopers know when Liverpool comes to Australia, they're going to take me up to the soccer. They do not ask me for anything. They don't require me to do anything. They take me, I have a good time, and again, my allegiance to Coopers is massive. And this is all about understanding who I am. Now, as an independent retailer, if we get back to the basics of independent retailing, and I'm going to say probably a few controversial things here. There are good retailers and there are shocking retailers, as you're all aware. And when I talk about liquor store owners, I'm talking about the freestanding liquor store component of our market. And I'm going to show you some slides in a minute about some of the pressures that we're under as independent retailers. But this could also relate to the bottle shop managers in hotel bottle shops. The sales, I'll just take you through some sales. You can see that the industry is under a lot of pressure, that sales are dropping. Now, as an independent operator, you also are well aware that we've got the big chain stores that we're competing against, the Dan Murphy's, the First Choice, the Liquorlands, the BWS's. But as you can see, these numbers are Aztec data. They're actually sales in data, and it's total liquor by value is down 1.6 and by volume is down by 3.2. So as a producer or as somebody trying to sell to me, you've got to work out who I am. You need to work out into what space I am playing in. Now, I've done some simple grammatics. There are typical, in my view, 4 different shopping type modes. You've got the access and the bars. First one is big box. I don't play in that space. I'm not interested in that space. I'm not, as Glenn says, you don't go after that space. I'm not interested in chasing Dan Murphy's down a rabbit hole. We then have the liquor stores that are attached to chains. These are a significant player. The ones that are actually attached to supermarkets, I'm not interested in. The ones that are playing in convenience sector, like the BWS and Liquorland freestanding, I am. And this is what is considered the grab-and-go market, with an average basket size of $32.17. This is true convenience. And Porter's Liquor is now trying to move into this space, which is the specialist independent, where the average basket size is $52. So this is my mentality trying to move forward over the next 5 years. So if you were to come and see me at Porter's Liquor, you would have to understand this is what I'm trying to achieve. But what else is happening in the market? As you can see, the New South Wales market, where I predominantly play, has 31% of the market share, and its value growth is actually down 2.4%. And I think this lifestyle, well-being, healthy attitude living is actually playing in a big space in New South Wales. And the other key part to the New South Wales market, especially if you want to play in premium or you want to play in wine, is that the business is actually done in Sydney. The business is done in the North Shore of Sydney, the inner east, inner west, and it's starting to creep out. Even though you could buy $1 million houses out in Landsvale, where my main store is. Oh, good morning, Jason from Aldi. How are you? Welcome. Even though you could buy $1 million houses out in Landsvale, the main part of the wine business, the main part of the premium business is actually done on the North Shore, inner east and inner west, as I said. And if you look around the different states, they all have that same type of value structure. The businesses are generally done in localised environments. Now, here's a scary chart. The current wine market size is estimated at 58 million 9LE, as it marries up beautifully. But look at the share split of the business. As you can see, the yellow is BWS. The red is Coles. ALM and LMG, that's a wholesale marketing groups and the wholesale business, make up, I think it's 10.1 share of the business. The online boys and the on-premise guys make up 18.1% of the business. So the rest of the market that I play in is in green. In 9.4% of the total wine business, I am playing in. And guess who else is in that little space? Dan Murphy's. So out of all the wine that is sold in Australia, the independent retailers make up 9.4%. That you are all coming to fight to get into my space. It's obviously going to be around relationships. What are the key areas that we are playing in? For us, the business is in the $15 to $25 bracket. Again, do you play in this space? If you're in 30 to 35, you are not going to get volume out of me or any other independent retailer. Sauvignon Blanc, obviously still a major player. Shiraz, a major player. Cab Sav, all the others, major players. So if you're coming to me with a Cab Merlot blend, or if you're coming to me with a Viognier blend slashed with Fiano, slashed with something else, you are going to struggle unless you have a reason for me to buy it. Key areas that we look at, obviously Marlborough, obviously Barossa, obviously Margaret River. Outside of that, you are going to struggle to convince me or any other retailer to seriously take you on board. And as you can see, red bottle wine is increasing and white bottle wine in New South Wales independents are increasing. What are the key areas I'm looking at right now as I speak? I'm excited by Prosecco, really excited by Prosecco. But again, I won't sell it at Yagoona or Lansvale, which is outer suburbs of Sydney. I'm going to sell it at Maroubra and Hornsby on the North Shore. I'm keen on Shiraz, as you can see. Shiraz is still a market that I want to talk about. I'm still interested in Cabernet and I'm still interested in premium whites. And again, I'm only interested in playing in the 15 and up bracket because that's my sweet spot. You have to understand what the independent retailer's sweet spot is at the moment. My business will be different to other businesses. You know, I think even if you look at the New South Wales market versus the Victorian market, I think the Victorian market's more advanced. The Victorian market's more experimental. The Victorian market in the whole is a better place to do business, in my view. There's more opportunities. There's also more outlets. In the New South Wales market, if I look at the different banner groups versus ownership banner groups versus control banner groups versus banner groups like ours where they're all independent, they all have different requirements. They all play in different space. You need to understand that space. It's not, I'm going to show you a slide very shortly, but it's not just about sending the rep in today to try and get space. You have to have a reason. And of course, New Zealand's key. But interestingly, we talked about international earlier. We're playing strongly now in France. In fact, Porter's now imports probably a container every 2 months out of France. We are cutting out the middleman. We are learning to get past distributors. We only want to deal with the principal. We have to strip costs. We have to be competitive in our market. Now, it's not surprising that most independent retailers today are marking up anywhere between 50 and 100% on product that is not known. If I can mark up greater, I will. If I can take it out of the supplier, I will. The other thing that's really interesting here is I think a lot of producers fall for the old two-card trick. They come in to see me as a retailer. Now, when we talk about relationships, a relationship is something that has been built over time. A relationship is not something that you guys have taken me away or you've said hello to me at a conference or you saw me at a tasting and think that you can sell me something. That ain't going to happen. Barossa Valley Estates, and I'll talk about that. Barossa Valley Association used to take independent retailers down to South Australia, show them a great time over the weekend, really invest in us, and then send us home. You know where they fell down? The operators of that association? They didn't follow up. They did not come and see us. They did not come and talk to us. In fact, the hosts that put you up didn't even bother contacting you. They expected you to contact them. But what they forget is that every week we would get 50 strangers coming through our front door trying to sell us something that was the same as everybody else's. We soon forget. Relationships have to be built. The bias, I love that term, bias. I think we have to build bias. We've got to build biases with our customers. We have to build relationships with our customers. You have to learn what we require as independent operators. We are a terrible bunch to deal with. We will say to you, is your product available in the chains? I don't want it. Then the next breath we'll say to you, but if it's not in the chains, that means there's 1,000 customers not seeing it, then I can't get it. Or I can't get it off the chains. We'll give you every fob off that we can possibly think of. Okay? We will stall you. We'll try everything in our power as the gatekeeper not to take that product on, because generally we are quite lazy. Stuart said a great story last week about mascot liquor. I'm going to use it because I think it is a cracker, absolute cracker. Here is a retailer that's got a thorough way through his store to the front of the shop. And on the front back door, where you park your car, the big car park, on the back door, it says, don't use this space to walk through to the front of the shop to get out to the other side. But even more interestingly, he's got, and this is a fairly good, sophisticated retailer, I would have thought. He's got a very big business, mascot liquor. Stu's gone in there to talk about Australian gin, and the guy has just said there is no such thing. Ignorance. We play well in ignorance as retailers because we don't have the relationships with the suppliers, because we have not learnt about new markets. And if you think social media is going to teach old guys like me what's going on in the market, you've got another thing coming. I just learnt how to use Twitter last week and I still stuffed that up, right? It does not happen. You have to really educate me. You really have to take me out of my comfort zone as an independent retailer. And as you get lower down, and I'm fairly fortunate being the president and I get to go out quite a bit, but as you get lower down the scale into the casuals and everything, you've got to try harder. When I first worked for Penfolds back in the 80s, and I'm showing my age now, but there was a guy by the name, an Irishman by the name of Paddy Cullen, and he always made sure that the part-timer, the casual, he would introduce himself to. Last week, when we were up in Darwin, the Adelaide soccer team, whatever it is, what's called, the A-League team, was actually in the same hotel as we were. And one of the fascinating things that I watched every morning was that every team member, every squad member, every person associated with that Adelaide United soccer team, every morning would go up and shake each player, each person, everybody's hand, and would talk to that person. They would shake hands every morning. So I cornered one of these guys and I said to him, why do you do that? Why is it that you shake everybody's hand every morning? And he said, every soccer team I've been involved in does it. It's because you've got to know your players, you've got to know the people you're working with, and if there's ever an issue, it always dissolves when you say good morning to each other. And it's really fascinating. And Paddy Cullen used to say to me, always talk to everybody. Doesn't matter who's in the store, what you're waiting for, because you never know where that person is going to end up. And I'm going to give you one other little anecdotal story about that. Patrick Stevenson used to run Liberty Liquors. He owned Liberty Liquors. He started off in one store in East Perth. He eventually sold out to BWS or Woolworths with 156 stores. And I was working with him one day, and this lady walked in, and she's been coming in day after day after day, buying 3 bottles of what was then Emu Bitter. And he said to her, you come in every day buying 3 bottles of Emu Bitter. She said, that's for my husband. He's a paraplegic, he can't get out, and his life is just about TV and beer, and his life is falling apart. And he said, well, but what do you do? She said, I'm an EA. And Patrick says, an EA? EA to who? And she said, I'm an EA to the guy's name I've forgotten now, but he was effectively the BHP chairman. Patrick just said to her, how do I get that business? How do we establish a relationship with you that gets that business? And she said, well, you've started. Now you've got to prove yourself. And in the end, that business was worth close to over 4 years, $1 million. It was massive. But by asking the question, talking to her, and he followed up, and he followed up, and he followed up. He didn't get it straight away, but he did get it. So, as I said, why call on me? Now, I work with quite a few coordinators around the country, and they all wanted me to put these slides in because they get very frustrated. And I can't actually read mine from here, but I'm going to turn. Why call on me? What is your principal reason for calling on me? What are you going to deliver me? If you do not deliver me profit and grow my categories, then don't waste your time. We see too many. Hip, my manager at Lansvale, said just a couple of weeks ago, he had 42 reps calling on him in a given week. And we did the calculation, that was 10 and a half hours of his life he's not going to get back. And he reckons none of them delivered him a thing. Not one. And it's fair to say that the industry reps today are worse than they were 5 years ago and worse than they were 10 years ago. They're not adding value. They don't understand the business. I think on-premise, they're getting it. Off-premise, they're definitely not getting it. You have to convince me, Stuart, why it makes good business sense for me to add this product into my category. It's not just about the fact that I know Stuart Gregor, that he's going to walk into my office and try and convince me to buy 4 Pillars Gin. He has to convince me. And I'm going to show you some numbers in a minute, I hope it works, where the independent retailers today are getting smarter about what they do. They're starting to really understand categories and how categories impact on profitability within their business. Is this product going to add profitability to a category? And is it going to grow the category? Key. As Stuart said, there are 1,000 Riesling producers, there are 1,000 Chardonnay producers, there are 1,000 whatevers. And like I said earlier, we get everyone coming in our door saying their product is different. Not often do I sit and say, you have something that's actually different. You are same. Okay? In the scheme of things, you are same. And it's very important that you try and differentiate. Try and develop the relationship. Why is the consumer going to pick this over its competitor set? That's his problem. He has to make sure it works. I think it's important for you to engage me if you are big enough before the introduction of a product. Engage me on what you've got coming up so that I can prepare. You don't walk into Aldi, you don't walk into BWS, you don't walk into Dan Murphy's without preparing them. So why shouldn't it be the same for any other banner group or in major independent retailer? Now, this is a really busy slide. But this is actually off my Maroubra store and some of the stuff that one of my guys is doing at the moment. When I talk about really getting to understand category management and how it impacts on their business. So Franco at the Maroubra store, he sent this to me the other day. So up top, you've got the July 14 sales number, July 15 sales number, some commentary, the July 14 profit number for that category, the July 15 profit, and then the combined number at the back. And I won't go through it in depth, but you can see you can actually increase a lot of sales or decrease a lot of sales, and profitability can be mixed up, right? Our guys now, independent retailers, are getting a lot more smarter. To grow category, you have to give me a profit story. So your relationship with me has to give me profit. Your relationship with me must make me excited. What is the sausage roll story? Okay. Back in the 90s, when I was running the Porters Group in WA, we had these guys by the name of Dave and Wayne. Now, Dave and Wayne were the typical... They had an iceworks business called Eskimo Nels, which was really doing really well, and they had their liquor store in South Street in South Fremantle that really was just there because they needed something to do during the day while the ice was churning out. And these guys were the steptoe and sons of the liquor industry. I'm telling you, they were the worst retailers in the world. Arrogant, chauvinistic, couldn't care less about their customers. In fact, the less they had to do for them, the better. And the way they treated reps was even worse. In fact, they had a game where they would try and get rid of as many reps out of their store the fastest they could. How they could insult people, how they could really work with them. There was one guy by the name of John, and I called him Rambo, who was an ex-SAS out of the Vietnam War. And he could not make it with these guys. They insulted him. He was really ridiculed and pillarised. Everything they could do to upset him, they tried to do. John he observed that every time he would be walking in, these guys would have remnants by their kitchen sink of sausage rolls. The sauce packets, it was quite a grotty kitchen, I've got to tell you, and the sausage rolls. He worked out that to get to these guys, at 10 o'clock he would walk in, not with his books, not with anything else, but he would walk in with a plate full of hot sausage rolls and a bottle of sauce. He did it for 6 weeks in a row. 6 weeks in a row. On the Tuesday, he would walk in with the sausage rolls and the tomato sauce, and they would just talk shit. They did not talk business. They would talk about the great South Fremantle Football Club, the even greater Fremantle Dockers. They would just talk about whatever. And eventually, Dave and Wayne started to buy stock. And I think this is critical for independence. If you want to sell to an independent retailer, you have to work out what their sausage roll is. Now, how do you do that when somebody doesn't want to talk? Now, I do this in my consulting. Generally, you'll find they're male. Generally, you'll find they're bored. And generally, you find they all run their liquor stores the same way. In fact, you could just probably find the same Benine Moselle on the bottom shelf in every liquor store that has been there for the 30 years. So how do you find out what makes this guy tick? There is one very simple way. Borrow their toilet. Because generally in their toilet, they're golfing magazines, they're fishing magazines, sometimes they're girly magazines, but there are things that are laying around the place that will give you a clue as to what is going on in this person's head. You've just got to look for the signs. One of the key areas that everybody is getting sucked into is that you're all trying to be same old, same old. You're all trying to sell to us the same way. How many of you know Frank Tate from ex-Evans and Tate, who now runs his, private owned label business? He started 4 years ago or 5 years ago doing private label. He started importing wines, he started doing private label wines, and he is the most annoying person you'll ever come across. The most annoying. He never takes no for an answer. In fact, no is just another challenge to go on and keep on going on. If you don't answer his phones, he'll block his calls and call you again. He is just constantly at you. But Frank has found out what the market needs and he goes to chase it. He goes after you. He really does try and find out what makes you tick. What he does for me is different to what he does for Jason and Aldi, and what he does for Woolworths, and what he does for other independent players. He has worked out that we are all different. For me, my requirements are a different credit structure than, say, Woolworths is. Frank will tailor-make his proposition to the retailer. Some rules he will not change. You still have to buy the 500 cases of one SKU. But the rule that gets changed is, do I care if Aldi's paying $33 and I've got to pay $35 when I'm going to make 50 or 100% on the product? No. He makes the rule that, okay, I understand that you have now got 12 weeks stock. How about if I give you 12 weeks to pay? This is how we're going to pay. You'll pay a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, and a quarter. Does that appeal to me as a retailer that can make me as competitive as the likes of Aldi? Absolutely. Is that different to everybody else that comes in and says, you've got 28 days or I'm going to sue you? Yes. Am I happy to deal with Frank? I'm not happy when he rings me every 5 minutes. I'm serious. He rings every day. But am I still happy with the relationship with Frank? Yes, because he does it so it helps me out. As I said, it's all about the relationship. One of the things that is now starting to come to the fore, and you're seeing that with the chains, is it exclusive to me? And I think in some ways, banner groups soon will start talking the same language. Is that product exclusive to me? And I think that will, certainly play out. We will be more interested in talking to suppliers, on especially around craft beer and spirits, that we can have some exclusivity. We don't want it forever. We only want it for a short period of time. Does it scream regionality? It's key. For us, it's now key that we have to simplify our message for our managers and our staff, so regionality is key. Does it increase my margin and mix? Yes. And if yes is the answer, what is the solution? So that statement alone is, if you want to do business with me, but we cannot reach a common ground, we've got to find a solution to what the problem is. You cannot be a stick in the mud. You cannot stand firm. If we all agree that we want to move down this path in business, and if we all agree that we're going to share in the profit, that's what it actually means. It's a joint business plan. We have to share. It cannot all be one way. I'm done. Thank you.